Hello, my name is Anna Burdett, and this is my second video on global issues. I'm doing this video today on global human trafficking, and my last video was on global malnutrition, and I'm a nursing major at Bloomsburg University. Okay, so what is human trafficking? Human trafficking is a crime that involves compelling or forcing a person to provide labor or services or to engage in sex acts. The coercion can be subtle or overt, and it can also be physical or psychological. Human traffickers have developed a multi-billion-dollar industry by exploiting those forced or willing to migrate, and this is considered organized crime. There is no single person or profile that is most likely to be a trafficking victim. It can honestly be anyone, but there are certain people that are more vulnerable to this, which are considered vulnerable individuals, including children in the welfare system, runaway children, homeless, Black people and other people of color, and unaccompanied children. Okay, so why is human trafficking a thing? So there's a demand for cheap labor and sex, which leads corporations continuing to look for cheaper and cheaper labor, which then leads to exploitation and trafficking. Globally, women and girls make up 65% of trafficking victims, and 90% of them are trafficked for commercial sex. And globally, 1 out of every 3 victims are children. Like stated previously, traffickers usually go for the more vulnerable people for exploitation, like commercial sex, forced marriage, and forced labor. And as sad as it is, children are the more vulnerable, and they're much easier to manipulate, so they're in much more danger for this. Also, a lack of human rights protecting people, this also has a big part in why trafficking is such a huge thing. When it's stated that not all legal frameworks center on human rights, it makes it much harder to determine who is responsible for responding to human trafficking and who is responsible for preventing it. Anti-trafficking efforts can be good and bad. Even when they are identifying the victims, they can re-traumatize them when their rights aren't protected. And if anti-trafficking activities don't use a rights approach, attempts to end it could also cause more harm if they don't make sure that they have their rights. Cultural factors. So child labor is commonly accepted in places around the world like Central America, East Asia, and in the Caribbean. So saying this, it's much easier to exploit children who are already out working in these environments since they're right out in the open, so it makes trafficking much easier. Debt bondage. So this occurs in India, Pakistan, and other Asian countries. This is when people are forced to work to pay off a debt, and this is a form of exploitation and trafficking, but can lead to even worse trafficking because most of the time people get trapped even after they pay off their debts. Another thing is women's rights in other countries. They will be the first group targeted when they are not seen as having the same human rights and respect as everyone else. Some other things are religions, political dissension, lack of employment opportunities, poverty, wars, and natural disasters. Globalization has also had a big impact on human trafficking. Although globalization has contributed to a better standard of living and increased the global economy, it has also greatly contributed to the transportation of illegal migrants. So this is because it gives criminal organizations the ability to expand their networks globally all around the world and create transnational routes that facilitate the transportation of migrants. So victims that leave their country, they think that they are doing it voluntarily, but they're unaware that they are being recruited for a trafficking scheme. They're usually bribed or kidnapped with false opportunities. Okay, so how is sex trafficking done? It is estimated that approximately 1 million people are trafficked each year globally, and between 20,000 and 50,000 are trafficked in the United States. The United States is the biggest destination of sex trafficking trade. So, sex slavery involves males and females, both adults and children, and contributes to an estimated 58% of all trafficking activities. This usually starts in origin countries such as Southwestern Asia, Eastern Europe, and Africa. Like said previously, human traffickers create transnational routes for transporting their migrants and supplying migrants with fraudulent passports and visas and advising them to avoid detection by border control agencies. So globally, recruiters seek migrants through the internet, media, employment agencies, and local contracts. So it's really scary to think about how easily people have access to you. And also, like said previously, these people are bribed with false job opportunities. They're manipulated into believing that they are being relocated to work in a legitimate form of employment and things that they've never gotten before. I think it is really sad because they're thinking that they're getting out of their home countries to go to a more stable and developed environment, but little do they know that they're being kidnapped for a trafficking scheme. And then here are some of the resources that I used for this presentation, and I hope you guys learned something, and thank you.